I'm always like, yes, we're having a conversation, but also the very first question is very much not a conversation question.
Yeah,
Can you just tell me your name
yeah.
and a little bit about sort of either what you do or a hobby? Like, I'm not gonna make you talk about your job if you don't want to, but like, just something about yourself.
Something about me. I'm Gabriel. I'm a product designer, which is about my job. Um, yeah, I mean, more about football. I've been playing football since I was like 5 years old. So, been doing it for 21 years now. And realised that's actually a really long time. It's like most of my life. It is most of my life, pretty much.
Did you play football non-stop? Pretty
Not
much.
non-stop, no. So I had like a couple of years like on and off basically, but from the ages of like 5 to 16, I was playing pretty much every year. And then stopped for like a year or so, came back to it at uni, and then came back to it afterwards as well. So it was a long time. I mean, that's why I'm bringing it up because it's the longest hobby that I've had.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that your hobby of choice fits so neatly with this
Yeah,
exact question.
yeah. Well, I would have spoken. I tried a lot of instruments when I was growing up, but none of them sticked. But I think it's because of the ADHD, and like tried every single instrument imaginable, pretty much.
It's cool. Football is better for getting out that energy, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in terms of the teams that you've played on, what sort of teams have you played on during this time?
Um, I've played in all sorts of teams. So when I was really young, I played for boys' teams. And then it got to the age of 12, I think, where you couldn't do that anymore. So I moved to a women's team because this was before I was like out as trans or anything. Um, and then stayed in women's teams pretty much through uni. Now I play for like female non-binary like mixed trans team. Um, I think it is mainly more like non-binary and women. So I now that because I've only recently like come out as trans like the last 6 months. So yeah, I'm not really sure. They've like welcomed me with open arms. I definitely can continue to play, and in the league as well, it's super supportive. But yeah, I do play with a lot of women. So I don't know. For myself, I might change it later on down the line. I don't know.
What sort of teams could or yeah, like what sort of teams could you imagine yourself playing for?
So I actually did get asked to play for a trans team, specific trans team. So like any and all genders basically. Um, and I think that might be the route I go down eventually. I don't know. Like I said, like no one's like made me feel uncomfortable, and like no one's like you can't play for us. Um, in the league I'm in now, I know that there has been like leagues like that in the past, but I wasn't a part of it then. But I play five-a-side football as well, so it's like I don't know. I play more for fun than to be super competitive now, I guess.
Fair enough. Jumping way back,
Mm.
how did you get into playing football, and also why was it a boys' team?
Um, I don't actually know. I'm the reason why I got into football is because my dad played football. Um, Dad was a massive football guy, and so was my brother as well. So my mum, when I was really young, tried to get me to do ballet, but that was never going to be an option for me. I think I went to like the first one and I cried because the ballet teacher was really mean to me and I wasn't very good. And then my dad took me to football and that was it. I just fell in love with playing the sport. Um, and then yeah, I was doing it ever since. I guess because my brother played for boys teams, that's probably why my dad took me to the boys football. Although saying that, like, I was a very big tomboy, like so it would have made sense to take me to a boys team. Or actually, thinking about it though as well, it probably would be that there wasn't that many girls teams around when I was young, because this would have been like I say like 21 years ago, and we would have been around here as well. So like in the suburbs, um, I don't know if there were any young women's teams. There might have been. There definitely was when I was, like, as I say, like 15. Um, but I think Burnham has a women's team. I'm not sure what age that starts though. Um, but yeah, I think maybe it was partly because of access as well at that point. Definitely no trans teams like 20 years ago. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think yeah, there may. I'm not sure if there are any trans teams for kids at the moment yet.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. I did hear on the, well, I don't know, it might have been on the news. I'm not my news sources aren't that good either because it's TikTok. So I'm not sure how accurate it is. Might want to fact check it. But I think like Rishi Sunak's planning to like segregate the sports teams into like not trans women and non-binary. I don't know. This is just what I heard. Trans men wasn't mentioned in that either. But I mean, maybe that's the thing that they're trying to do now. I don't really know why they would try and do that, but
I imagine, because I know that the rugby ruling is that trans men, and I think actually anybody who's on testosterone, so also non-binary people on testosterone,
yeah,
are not allowed to play on women's teams in rugby. And
yeah,
if they go on a men's team, they have to disclose.
right, okay.
Which is a little bit messed up.
Mm.
Because it puts them in potential danger.
Yeah.
Also signing a waiver saying that if they get hurt, it's not a liability of the club or the teams that are playing.
Right.
It's like, all right, well that's crime waiting to happen.
Yeah.
I imagine that the reason trans men are not mentioned in the football is probably the same reason that I'm kind of doing this project. I imagine is like them being like, oh wait, they exist as well.
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. That's it though. Like, part that we don't exist, and partly like the fact that trans women are just always like demonized, and the rhetoric is always about them and the spaces that they take up, which is just insane. Like, a lot of people don't even know that someone is trans, is or isn't trans. So like the fact that we take up so much headspace in cisgendered brains just baffles me. It's crazy.
Yeah. Just in terms of like, this was what I was mentioning, like acknowledging that there is a lot of stuff being said that is no good and factually incorrect and not helpful at all. Versus what it is that we as trans people are actually looking for and actually are trying to say about why sport is important. So in a very vague sense, so go for it in whichever way you want. What do you think like trans people have to like offer a space like football?
Yeah, cool. Oh god, I don't know. That's a pretty big question. What do trans people? Well, the thing, I don't know. I mean, I think personally that I don't think there needs to be definitely like segregated sports like what Rishi Sunak is trying to roll out now. If that's the case, because again I might have not heard this accurately, but I just don't think that there needs to be such a massive rhetoric behind like what team should they play in, and I don't know, trying to like segregate people into different groups. From my understanding of the different trans people in sport is like you'll hear a story of like, oh well, a trans woman like was winning all of these races or whatever, and the reality was that when they were a man, they were winning all of the races and stuff anyway. So it's like whether you're taking hormones or not doesn't affect your ability to be good at sport. If you're good at sport before, you're going to be good at sport continually. So yeah, I just think it's talked about way too much, and there's no need. Also, the thing that I find about the whole talk about schools and things like that is that I bet like a lot of the kids probably aren't overly like interested in what's going on anyway. They would happily just play sport with their friends. The fact that the adults are talking about it so much and trying to like put people in a category is what's generating like fueling all of this hate, and it's sad. Like I feel sorry for the trans kids that have to go through that in school, like especially trans women that seem to be demonized so much when it comes to sport for having an advantage that they probably, I mean, they definitely don't have.
I think as well, like, because it's like very hyper-focused on testosterone as like, I don't know, the greatest evil or benefit or whatever, like the constant thing that happens around testosterone.
Yeah.
It fails to think about what is true for, I think, both like women's sports as a whole and trans inclusivity in spaces, which is like, actually, if people don't have access and funding and support, they're never going to be able to realize their potential at the same level as people who do have those things. Which, I mean, you were talking about access earlier, and you were kind of supposing, like I have heard from others, like it was like, yeah, I was on a boys' team because there were no girls' teams, and it's like, well, yeah, then you're gonna not have as many girls playing football, and if their gear is worse and they don't get the chance to play in as many leagues, they're also not going to become as good players.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's that's a question.
No, but I agree. I think that's the thing, and like when you start bringing out all of these different rules and like trying to, like, I think hormonally figure out what is a woman and all of this stuff, it just pushes people that would come out back into the closet, or further alienates us as a population. And we're such a small percentage as well. We're so small. Like, does it really matter that much that it needs to be this big discussion? And like, I don't know, I think that's the thing that gets me the most, is just that it's like, why do you care? Like, why do you care? And there's definitely room for trans people in sport. Yeah, and I just think that it doesn't need to be such an issue and such a massive debate at the moment.
Okay, and now to actually get back to you a little
bit. Yeah.
Sorry, but actually, I mean, it ties in very nicely. Like, what would you want from a space, like an idealized space?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the reasons why I've always sort of played football and come back to football was definitely like a sense of community that I found in it. So it is nice to have trans community in sport again. I guess it's difficult because the reason why I found community in football largely was when I was a cis woman, it was because I was queer and I found like a lot of queer friends that way. And now, like, finding my identity as a trans person, again, like, that's where I found my community, alongside like loving the sport, obviously. I think definitely a big motivator for me also was the community aspect. It'd probably be nice to live in a world where we didn't need to go to a particular space to find that community. But I mean, equally, it is nice to know that there are trans spaces, queer spaces, where you can like meet like-minded people. So what do I want from football as a whole? It's difficult for me to answer. I don't know, because I do love the fact that I've found spaces that have helped me in my own identity. And I've like met some really incredible gender fluid people that have helped me grow so much. And if it was in a different circumstance, I probably wouldn't have found that community. But then also, on the flip side to that, it would be nice in a future where trans people are just included and accepted within mainstream sport, and we don't need to go off to find our own space. We're just a part of the spaces that already exist. But I guess I have enjoyed having a trans space, and definitely been lucky in the fact that I haven't experienced any real negative transphobia throughout playing football at the moment, probably because I sought out a space that was specifically for non-binary trans people, I think. Because like I said before, like I have heard stories of um, there was a league, another five-a-side league in London, and I think there was a trans person on the team, and the ref stopped the game from going ahead. I'm not sure if you've heard this story. The ref stopped the game, and both teams were really angry because they were like, the other team were like, that's fine, we can play against them, it doesn't matter. And the team that this person was playing for, they were also like, we want to play. But apparently it was an FA rule that didn't allow them to play, even though this was like a five-a-side league for fun. A lot of the teams were obviously quite annoyed at that. So, I mean, in terms of the teams involved, it was a very positive response for the majority, I think. And a lot of them did drop out of that league. And they've formed the league that I'm in now. Or the league that I'm in now might have already existed, but like more went over to that league instead. But I'm not sure. I don't know how much the league spoke out against the whole anti-trans like situation that occurred. So I think that is why a lot of teams did leave. But yeah, I mean, like an experience like that would be enough to put someone off playing sport for sure. Just like not feeling welcome. But like I say, like my experience when I came out to my team, it was lovely. Like everyone was so nice. Used my new name, like everything without any issues. And even now, I'm like, taking testosterone and like, I've not been kicked out yet. But I also am not still any better at football either. Yeah, crazy concept. Considering I've played for 21 years as well, you'd probably think I'd be a little bit better than I am. But yeah, no, it's not giving me superpowers yet, which I'm actually quite annoyed at. I wanted to get a little bit better.
That's how it's sold to us.
Yeah, I thought that I was going to be so good now.
Which league are you with?
So I'm in the Goalposts League. We play on Sundays, and it's in Dalston. I play for Romance FC.
Romance FC.
Yeah, it's a really good team. I love my team. They're so nice. Everyone like there's some really cool five-a-side names in the league. Everyone gets a bit creative with it, which is what I like. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's nice. Shamik is the guy that runs the league, and he's lovely. Yeah, good guy.
Oh, I'm gonna do some research around it because I think what's been really interesting for this is that like, because I was aware of like Queerspace and I was aware of Truck.
Right.
In London. And I mean, I'm not based in London, so I wasn't like necessarily doing all of the research, but those are the ones that kind of were like coming up again and again if I was doing like a Google. It's been nice to hear that there are a lot of different teams that are actually popping up. I think maybe it's mostly in five-a-side leagues.
Yeah. Because so the other team that I got asked to play for is Star FC, and they're a trans team. I think I'm pretty sure.
So that's like trans across genders and non-binary as well.
Yes, yeah. I don't think it's like exclusively trans either, but like a trans focus, I guess. But yeah, I wish I knew more information about that situation, but I don't know enough details to speak about it on camera.
It's all good. It's all good. I won't make you be like swear under oath or anything. You're all good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like very interesting in it as well, being like, because if either people broke from that league to make a new league, or people broke from that league to join a queer, is it queer league?
I don't think this is a queer league. No, so it's just an inclusive league. I'd say it's like it is mainly women, but there are trans people within the league. And yeah, like I've never experienced anything negative in that league. Yeah, everyone's been nice. Everyone like get my pronouns right as well. So
cool.
Yeah, they actually do. When we start each game, we do a little circle time, and every team goes around their pronouns and stuff. So it feels nice. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like there's something in that about like, yes, we want to be accepted in the mainstream, but also maybe the mainstream can learn a bit from us. Like, maybe we've got the right idea about how to build an inclusive sports space, inclusive football space, let's say, for this project.
Yeah.
And that rather than trying to find ways to jam us into some version of what already exists, which, as we all know, is I mean, it's not even inclusive for cis people. I mean, you're not seeing like out gay footballers at the highest level playing.
Yeah.
So, like, it's clear. I mean, in men's football, obviously women's football is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing as well, because women's football is also not. It's more mainstream than it was, but it's not considered in the same way. It's not given the same kind of funding. It's not given the same kind of like a lot. I mean, it hasn't historically been given the same kind of airtime or like sponsors and things like that. And so there's an interesting thing about like actually maybe like cisgender mainstream cultural ideas about football could do to listen to us, not just because they should be respecting us, but also because it could benefit them.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think as well, like it does come back to the community aspect, which I think women's football does quite well. Also, it's just a bit of a friendlier, safer space than men's football, which has always been the case with like hooliganism. Did I say that right? And things like that. Like I think that's why slowly women's football is taking off a little bit more now, because it is a different environment to that of the men's, and I think that trans is kind of more that way as well. It's just like a safer space, and it feels like a nice community to be involved in. It's definitely where I've met most of my friends, which has been really lovely. So I do think there's that aspect, which the mainstream sport could learn from. In football, I think it's going to be tough to kind of make that change, just because I think it's like a culture for the men. So yeah, I don't know. It would be lovely to see a different kind of football, but I think that it will definitely be trans people, for instance, leading that change if it ever would be to take shape. Yeah.
I keep thinking, like, if everybody were to just be like, oh, actually, the FA is bullshit, and were to leave the FA and then like create their own leagues, like what those teams may have done, I'm like, oh, then the FA wouldn't have any more power, and then they just like I don't know. The reason that mainstream football is the way that it is because of there's one ruling body at the FA, and it's like they don't have to be.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Like, it really doesn't have to be that way, and I guess it will take like these new teams coming forward and like creating their own space. And I think that it is starting to take shape in that way a little bit at the moment. I feel there seems to be more trans or queer focused teams now cropping up. Like I know quite a few in Peckham, there's quite a few in Hackney. So I think it's like slowly getting there. I don't know about 11-a-side though, as much, but I don't play 11-a-side football anymore, so it just seems a bit too much exercise for me at the moment.
Yeah, I was actually, that was a question as well. I mean, I guess you've almost kind of answered it, but I was like, what is it that you're looking for in terms of not just like a community space, but what is it you're looking for in terms of football?
Football, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess there's like me now that does just want the fun side of it, because I think it's like moving into London after living in Manchester for a few years, going to university there. I definitely felt like I wanted to have more friends around, and like sport is a great place to do that. So that's probably my focus now. But when I was younger, I think what I was looking for in sport. I mean, maybe at a time I would have wanted to play competitively or something like that. And like I say, there weren't like that many female teams, and definitely no trans teams. Whether I would have wanted to play for a trans team, I'm not so sure, but I think access could be better, 100%. For women, I guess, more. But then trans people as well, I don't know. I guess it's up to the individual of what team they'd want to play for and feel comfortable playing for. And that's kind of a different topic, I guess, because again of all the FA rules, what the trans people would be allowed to do if they wanted to play sport when they were younger. So I think access would be the biggest thing if I'm like looking back at when I was a bit more serious about football. Then that would probably be it, I guess. Because I know, I mean, for me, like living in the suburbs, there wasn't loads of teams, but also I was like privileged enough that my dad could drive me everywhere on the weekends, and we'd go like somewhere sometimes like half an hour, 40 minutes, even an hour I think away for our matches, and then that would be an hour back as well. So that's like a lot of time and effort that goes into finding these spaces. So I couldn't imagine being in different circumstances, like what that would be like if we were closer to London. I'm not too sure what the football team access would be like there. But there is also the financial side to it as well, because you've got to like pay to join the team. So I think for me it was something that I had at least somewhat access to, or the resources to access the sport. But not everyone would be in that position, I guess, especially for when it cuts off at 12 and you have to, if you're playing for a boys team, you have to move to a girls team. I can imagine that would be quite difficult for some people if they didn't have loads of teams around. Yeah. But yeah, I like, and in terms of transport, I don't really know for when I was younger, because I wasn't really playing in any trans teams, so.
Can't imagine there were any trans teams.
No, yeah, there probably weren't any, so.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure how the state of trans teams for minors is right now. Like, I don't know if there's like a, because I feel like we're very good at building our own spaces, right? So I'm sure that there's somewhere there's like a few parents who've been like, all right, we want our young trans kids to get together and play in the park or something. But I don't know. I can't imagine that there's currently like an actual team.
Yeah, and I think it's again, it's like an interesting question. Like, do we want to be like have our own teams as trans people? I guess it's like up to the trans kids to decide like how they want to play sport and be included in sport, because it is nice to have these spaces that are trans and you feel safe, because feeling safe right now is, I think, the most important thing for a lot of trans people, because they don't always feel safe, especially trans kids. So I think that's the biggest thing for them. But then, yeah, it would be nice to imagine a future where everyone can just play together, and it doesn't need to be a big issue about what team they're going to join. But yeah, I guess that'd be something that the kids should be able to decide for themselves.
Yeah, I imagine as well there's something cultural that needs to shift in terms of like, I guess majority cis men spaces, where it's like I haven't actually managed to see like a queer football match myself yet, but I've seen a few like cis men's football matches and the like, and I'm like, okay, the atmosphere there is a certain kind of way, and then I've heard that like for queer football and for trans like inclusive football, it's a very different atmosphere.
Yeah.
I imagine that something there has to change as well for there to be like all inclusive spaces.
Yeah, and I feel like it's difficult because football is so ingrained in like the culture of cis men that I think it's hard to imagine a space right now that is inclusive of everyone. That's why I think the focus has been or at least that I've experienced, like a lot of trans people that I know go to watch women's football because it does just feel more inclusive of a space. And obviously there's a lot of like queer people in women's football as well. So I haven't actually been to a trans football, like professional football game. I know there was one recently at Deptford Stadium, and I missed it. I was at Tina Turner the musical. It's a great sing along. I loved it. But I went and joined everyone after, and they were having like a bit of a party at the clubhouse. So it was lovely. Like clearly the environment is very welcoming, and hopefully that will grow too. Having those inclusive sports being played at a professional stadium. It's not a huge stadium, but just to put those events on, and just to remind people that we do exist, especially trans men. We are actually here.
Was that the one with the transmas team on transgender visibility?
Yes, yeah. I think that would have been it. So I'm not 100% sure if that's they play solely in a trans league or. Yeah.
So basically, it's actually the person that I was talking with right before you happened to be captaining of that team.
Really? Oh, cool. Okay.
I mean, he plays on a men's team usually, but they basically Truck, which is run by Lucy Clark, who's a trans woman. She was like, do you think this would be there'd be interest for this, and like tons of trans mass people were like, yes, absolutely. So a lot of trans mass people came from all over the country. So there were people from up north, there were people from London. I assume there were people from east, west as well. I mean, I just know because I'm like, I know a couple of people from Leeds who went down there.
Right. Okay.
So like it's like from all over. So it was people who'd never played together before. It was people from a lot of different like abilities as well.
Oh,
and so
okay.
It really was in a way like an exhibition, and it was against a cis men's team, and they all actually had a really good time apparently.
Really?
I heard from one of the people that I was talking with a few days ago, like that actually the cis men's team was really respectful, and they were really grateful to have been given the opportunity to play in this match and be a part of like this thing happening.
Cool.
And there is now a Slack, which is basically I think this is all happening like last week for me in terms of this information. So
yeah.
Me. But there is now a Slack which I believe is for transmasculine people, might be just trans people generally, unsure. Which is basically gauging the possibility for putting up a lot of teams around the country.
Cool.
Because obviously that one was like a team for a day, and the other ones are hopefully going to be sort of more established teams, and then we'll see where it goes from there. But I've been told that there's over 200 people on that now. And
wow.
that's just since that game was played.
Yeah.
So it's clearly like the second the availability is there, we'll show up. Yeah.
I think that's it. Like, again, like people just need to know that we exist and these spaces can exist if they just get off the ground with it. But that's exciting. That's really cool to hear that that's going on. Because I've got that game completely wrong. I was like, it's just trans people playing game. But that's cool, especially if there's going to be a league that will come of that, or teams that will come of it. We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
There's going to be another match the day after Trans Pride Brighton. So
oh, okay, cool.
Maybe. Because I didn't even know that was happening. Fully missed it. And then the day after, like, a bunch of friends were like, hey, were you at this? And I was like, I was not.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of social media presence, so it just went way over my head. But this time I'm ready.
Yeah, no, I like my friends that went said it was really, really good. And I did meet them afterwards. And the party was still going. I can't remember what time it stopped. Maybe like 11 or 12 or something. But they let us stay in the clubhouse, so... Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad that I missed the actual matches, but
it's nice that you got to be at the party.
Yeah. No, it was good. I might see if I can get involved somehow when it comes back again.
Would you be interested in being like in an inclusive men's space or a transmasc specific space, or like is that something that you'd want to try?
Yeah, like I think like transmasc spaces, like definitely I enjoy being a part of. I think for me at the moment, like I always feel more comfortable in women and trans inclusive spaces. And I guess like I don't know if that is going to change. I feel like maybe more as well because I'm pretty early on in my transition and I still feel like I have quite a lot of feminine features. Um, so I'm still perceived a lot of times as a woman, and I don't want to be. Uh, so I think maybe that's also why I feel comfortable more in teams that I know are trans inclusive, but a lot of them with cisgendered women. Um, because yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not that. I mean, I've just not been in those spaces. I think it's just the unknown, because like you mentioned about the cisgender teams that were really appreciative of being invited to play against trans players. Like I think that it would that those spaces will exist, and there are people that would be welcoming. It's just about finding those spaces, and I think for me, it would be the fear of not um, not knowing like how I would be perceived. I think that's the main barrier at the moment to that. But I definitely would give it a go. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I was like, it's also like you could also just be like, yeah, no, I like where I'm at, like, yeah, because I've had people be like, yeah, I mean, I like lesbian spaces and that's where I'm at. Like,
Yeah, well, I think this is the thing. I would prefer, yeah, like queer spaces, and like yeah, queer above um, being in like a female team as well. I think that's where I've always naturally gone. Like from my university team, even though it was women, it was also majority queer, and queer is where I feel most comfortable. Um, and I think it just happens to be that the female spaces are typically more of the queer spaces, so that's like the natural place that I feel comfortable in. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's that whole idea of there needs to be a lot of more talk and acceptance of trans and queer people in men's sport, in men's football, um, and then off the back of that, being able to accept a trans person in their team. But then, like, on the flip side to that, you hear a lot of trans people talk about how they then experience male privilege, trans masks. I mean, like once they have come, if they pass, for instance, or again, this is my TikTok stories, so it might not be wholly accurate, but I've seen some videos of people saying that they've experienced male privilege in a way that is well, it's more like they'll experience male misogyny, like they'll see it firsthand of how cisgendered men speak to each other when they don't think women are around. So that environment again would not be something that I don't want to be a part of if that is what takes place in the cisgendered spaces, which of course like it will do. So there would be that side to it as well.
yeah, cis men, I think straight and gay have, I think, a little bit of work to, I mean, not quite the same work, I think, because obviously when it comes to the cis straight places, they're also quite homophobic.
Yeah.
But like, I think they probably have some work to do to feel inviting to a lot of people. I know that there are some spaces that do exist, or like in the sense that I've some of the people that I've talked to have been like, yeah, my team has been fine. But I think maybe like culturally, in order to feel like one would feel initially safe entering a space like that, I think they have a lot of work to do. Because I mean, I also don't like, you know, if you're a trans guy and you're stealth and your team doesn't know and they start spouting about misogyny, you're not going to feel safe either.
Yeah,
Because like your history and your body doesn't look exactly like theirs, and so you're just going to be like, great, cool, I'm never coming out to any of you. Like,
yeah, because that's it. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, if someone has those views about women, then that you know that they're probably not going to have positive views then on trans people. So it would be the safety thing. I guess because for me, I've always been in female or queer spaces, and I'm still pretty early on in my transition. I've not really felt like I want to be in like a male team. I don't know if that would change. Like, if I ever got to the point where I could pass, maybe I would want to do that. But I don't know. It more, I think, because I would feel maybe like I wouldn't feel as comfortable playing with women if I presented as a man, or if they assumed that I was a cisgendered man playing in their league. But like I say, like my league is very welcoming, so I don't know if that would ever happen anyway. But yeah, I'd say the cisgendered male spaces is something I've kind of avoided up until this point. So yeah.
And also, not to maybe be a little bit controversial, sorry. But I'm like, I think also with women's spaces, I think the main thing that I've felt they need to be sure of is that like there are going to be non-binary people who they may perceive as a cis guy. There are going to be trans guys that they might perceive as a cis guy. There are going to be trans women that they might perceive as a cis guy. And so like that is where I'm like, okay, I hope that these women's spaces will also be inclusive of that, because it's much more, it's very complicated, because I also understand like the scar tissue is there, like the fear is there, and the like we've built these spaces for a reason is there. But yeah, I think that's I think we may be like at a point in this conversation where we're reaching another step to it. I think maybe, I don't know, like that's a ramble, but
yeah, no, it is definitely an interesting point though, because also I mean for me, like the team that I'm in right now, even though it is like women and trans people, it's always been a really inclusive space, and I think also part of the controversy of teams leaving the previous league for not accepting a trans person has meant that this league is very, very inclusive. So I probably have a bit of a skewed perspective in that sense of female teams too, because I've not had to play as a trans person in a women's team, like solely women's team. So I couldn't speak on that perspective. And I can imagine that there'd still be things that would come up, like there is anywhere a trans person goes right now.
I'm really pleased to hear that you've been able to find that like really that sweet spot, like
Yeah.
because that's a really good example of a space that's doing it right from the sounds of it.
Yeah, no, they are, and it was like from the first moment I joined, it felt really inclusive. So I just didn't really have any struggle there. I don't know what it would have been like if I transitioned, for instance, during university, because I was playing for our university team, and I'm not sure what rules they would have for trans people there, like with the FA rules of taking testosterone and things like that. I don't know, like I couldn't say, so I'm sure there probably would be more barriers if I did transition at uni, which would have been obviously a big challenge for me, because my university experience was quite heavily based around football. That was like the main thing I did every week. Those are my closest friends. So I think it would have been a big part of my life that was missing if I couldn't have done that. at uni. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look back and consider how things might have been different. If I wasn't as lucky to be in the place I'm at now and be included now, and something that I kind of sought out as well, wanting to be in an inclusive space. But it's kind of easy for me to access these spaces because I had different friends that were already playing for that team, knew that it was a safe environment. If not everyone has that, so it could be a bit more of a challenge for people, especially for people that aren't based in cities or even in London. I'm not sure how you've experienced it up north, because I mean in Manchester I didn't really have many trans friends that I knew of, and I wasn't aware of any trans football teams either. Whereas now in London I definitely am aware of quite a few, or at least trans inclusive spaces, and hopefully there's going to be more of them, obviously, moving forward, but we'll see.
Did you play 11-a-side at university?
I did, yeah. I played 11-a-side at uni. Yeah, and I do love playing 11-a-side, but I'm just not that fit anymore. So yeah, I do my 20-minute stint now at 5-a-side, and then I'm pretty much done for the day.
My stamina is completely shot.
Yeah.
I did a match, it was just off the back of a different event, and then they were doing try out this team, just for the fun of it. And it was one of those smaller pitches, and it was 5-a-side. It was these 10 minutes rapid matches. But then our team was it was 3 different teams, and our team were playing the first 2 matches, so it was basically 20 minutes with little breaks when we were switching sides and things. And by the end of it, I was I'm tasting blood in my mouth. I'm so tired. I hadn't played football since I was a teenager up until that point, and I was just wow, okay, I have some work to do.
Yeah, it is though. It's intense. It's a lot, and I think now, because I'm doing it for more of the fun aspect of it, I've lost my fitness quite a bit.
Fair enough. I am going to ask you the most important question now. What is your preferred position?
This is a good one, because I used to say left mid, but again, I'm not that fit anymore. So it's between left mid and left back, I think, depending on how much stamina I have. I think I prefer playing left mid, because I prefer being up forward a little bit. But it depends how much I'm going to have to run. So
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm defense because I get anxious.
Really? I feel like I would be more anxious in defense sometimes. If they're running at me, I'm
I'm just as long as I can get it to somebody, and then they continue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then because I don't actually, I quite like being up front, but then I've noticed that whenever I'm up front and the ball then shifts backwards, I'll be what fuck? What do I do? No, okay. What is your favourite thing? Your
favourite thing?
Football?
I've spoken a lot about the community side of it, which is massive thing of why I love football. So probably is my favourite thing, but about the sport itself, I think it is a time when you're on the field with your teammates, and I just completely switch off and zone into the game, and I think it's so nice to have that kind of escapism now, especially in the society right now and everything that's going on about anti-trans rhetoric, all of these things. It's nice to be in a safe space and shut out all of the noise and just play with friends and enjoy your time playing together. And there is quite a buzz when you're playing well. I definitely get a sense of achievement if I can score a goal or something, which doesn't happen that often. But yeah, I think that's it. Playing well, and especially when you play well as a team, I just think that it's just the best feeling. And then that's always been a part of the whole community aspect as well, because we go out and celebrate together afterwards, or maybe commiserate afterwards. But it has always been that sense of like having people around. And I just think when you're playing well, it's just such a great adrenaline rush, which is probably what's always been brought me back to the sport. Probably because that was the sport I've played the longest, and I wasn't as good at any of the other sports. So I was like, well, I'm not going to play that then. Just stick with what I knew, because I wanted to feel good about myself.
What other sports was it that you tried?
I used to play cricket when I was younger, again because my dad. Like we had to play netball at school and hockey, because those are like the girls' sports. I never really got into them as much, and I play basketball now, but loosely. I don't really properly play. It's just more again for like friendships and stuff. But football's it's definitely the sport I feel most comfortable with. So yeah, that's been it for me. When I was in secondary school, I really wanted to play football. So we did actually start a girls' football team, but it wasn't there before. Before me and a few of my friends said that we were interested in starting one. So yeah, again, like football is just one of those sports that always been categorised as male in the UK. And it is interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, that maybe like mixed gendered sports is a good way to I don't know, like I don't want to say solve the issue, but just like for people to all play together, so that we don't need to categorise people in certain groups.
Especially kids.
Yeah, kids. Yeah, like young kids. Does it really matter? Like what? Yeah, like having separate sports or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, to be honest.
I imagine there's two things that I wanted to follow up on there, and I'm like, which one do I want to go down first? No, first of all, I just wanted to ask you, like, did you get support in creating that football team?
Yeah, I did. I had a teacher, my DT teacher. She was interested in football. I think she played for one of our local teams, so she did help us set that up. And I think that was it. Obviously, she needed to take our training, so it was kind of again like lucky on our part that there was a teacher that was willing to do that, because I think if there wasn't, then we probably wouldn't have been able to make that team. So yeah, it was down to her really, I think.
Goodness for the single teachers that supported us through the years.
Yeah.
I always feel like it's a teacher rather than a school that's helpful.
Yeah, and it because she was interested in it, and I think if that wasn't the case, then it probably wouldn't have happened.
The other thing that I was gonna say was like, it's a little bit also off the like a little bit similar to a question I already asked, which was really just around like the solution to the problems, which I think what we can do is like we have the fact that it's not a simple answer, and I think a lot of like cis straight spaces, they're looking for a really simple answer, because they actually what they're saying is we don't want to change anything.
Yeah.
And so instead of trying to get more complicated about solutions, being like, well, let's try some mixed gender teams, let's try some trans only teams, let's try some women's teams that also have like non-binary people, trans women, trans men, because that's either spaces they've gone to or the spaces they started out in, and the same for like men's teams that are inclusive in the same way. And like, let's just try a bit of everything and see what happens, and maybe it's actually better that way, and etc. They're like, no, we're just gonna try nothing.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and it is. I think like that's probably the best way to do it. Is just say like, well, let's try these things, and see what works best for those people, like especially for school kids. I do think that like having trans only teams for people of like secondary school age or younger just seems like not really a good way to move forwards. Is this like, especially at that age, because you're so vulnerable, even just coming out, like that's such a massive thing for you to do, to then be kind of like alienated and isolated even further just doesn't really make sense to me. And also at that age, I don't really think there are going to be like tons of out people in school, so how are you going to have a trans only team? It's got like maybe 2 players in it. What sports are they going to play? Like, it's obviously not going to work. I guess it's just like trying to push some new rhetoric to say that they have done something. But yeah, in reality, you're not going to get a whole team of trans people. So that's kind of insane as a concept. But
I don't think, like, because I think with kids specifically, I think it's like, well, I think one thing that's really important to do with kids is kind of demystifying the idea of gender, instead of trying to like create these weird artificial divides between gender that then have to get, like, you know, God, that's a whole other other thesis, right? But like, but like, you know, like, speaking of like majority cis men spaces where it's like, ooh, can you go into that space? Are you going to be weird about it? Are you going to be misogynistic because that's how you've been raised? And would it have been slightly different if there wouldn't have been all of these weird focuses on trying to create artificial differences between men and women, like as preteens?
Yeah.
Like, children don't have those concepts until they're pushed upon them. So like, I think with kids, it's like maybe less trying to be like, oh, here are the girls, here are the boys, and here are the trans kids, and more like, here are the kids, and you can play together.
Yeah.
You're all kids.
Yeah. When you're kids, especially, like, there's not going to be massive differences anyway, so you may as well just all play together, and then it doesn't need to be a big issue for them. Yeah.
Okay. We're sort of nearing the end.
Cool.
Can you just let you know so you're not like, all right, in another hour.
That's fine.
I mean, I kind of gladly would do another hour, but I'm just like, I quite like knowing how much time of things is left. Would you be up for giving me an anecdote about something football related, but just something that was like fun or surprising or taught you something or interesting, or something that you would be like, oh yeah, I'd want to share a story about that time that thing happened?
Oh well, I have stories. I've got a funny story, but I don't think it's not really relevant to the I don't know, the conversation about sports. Or I've got another one about like being around friends and stuff. I'll start with this one, and if you want to cut it out, you can cut it out. Basically, in my final year at university, I was in football training, and my manager at the time wanted me to show everyone how to do an overhead kick, because I'd tried one the week before, and I didn't score, but I don't even remember if I got the ball, but he just thought it was funny, so he was like, go on, show us how to do one. So in the middle of training, everyone turned to me, and I tried to do an overhead kick, completely smacked the ground, and I like shattered my collarbone. So I mean, that was a funny story. The thing is as well, because I was like so embarrassed, I was like, you've got to get up and keep playing, like this needs to be like swept under the rug, just get on with it. So I did, and I tried to carry on playing, but like my arm started like going to the floor, and I was like, I think I'm really hurt here. I thought that I'd like damaged the nerve in my neck or something. But then I went to A&E, and it turns out that I did just shatter my collarbone. Yeah, I think it was so cold. This was up in Manchester, and it was so cold that I think that my adrenaline was just going, and I didn't realise how injured I'd actually made myself. But I don't know, that's not really relevant to anything we're talking about.
No, it's so relevant. I mean, I know that we've been talking a lot about politics and trans philosophies of space building, but like it is really about like you in football.
Yeah, and that was me in football, and then I couldn't play for the rest of the season either. So yeah, that was a time.
Sorry, that's very funny.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. That's the only thing that comes to mind of like sharing it. Like that's definitely a standout moment in my football career, I'd say. There's just been times I think throughout like playing football, especially times at university, where there was like a moment of realization where like I'm around people that like I really love, really care about, and it was just like a really strong sense of community, I guess, and like friendship. Sounds really lame. But yeah, no, I don't think there has been a specific time. I think it is just those like bonding experiences that I've had through football, even laughing to everyone about when I broke my collarbone in front of the whole team. But yeah, no, I think it's just those times and the people that I've met that have like made the sport for me, I think.
I mean, that's why you're still playing it, right? Like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it always comes back to that, I think. But yeah, I'm going to Lyon on Thursday this week to play. I think I'm playing in a tournament with Romance FC and some French teams, I guess, which is going to be interesting. I feel like they're probably going to be really good. I don't know why I have this idea in my head that the French are going to be really good at football. So I don't know if I'm prepared. I don't know if I'm fit enough. But
What is that? That's also 5-a-side?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's going to be a 5-a-side team. So yeah, hopefully that, because I always found that with my team at university as well. We used to go on tour each year, and those were so fun. Those experiences. It's like very silly memories from being on tour. Like there is another one actually. When we were on tour in I think we were in Lloret de Mar or somewhere in Spain, and my friend wasn't feeling too well, so I went to go get them a bottle of water. We were outside waiting by the coaches. Came back, and all the coaches had left. So my team, they'd forgotten about me. Went to go get this water. Luckily, there was one other bus still there taking other teams, and they were going to the same place. So I got on that bus, ended up chatting to some random guy, and the journey was fine. And then when I actually arrived at the venue, we were like, the car park was at the top of this hill, and my team were like right at the bottom, but they could still see me. So I was running down, like waving this bottle of water, like shouting at my team, and then everyone was like cheering, like, "Yeah, you made it!" That was another standout moment actually, getting cheered as I was running down that hill. They've forgotten me.
Is there anything that you, at this point, you're like, oh, I really wish we'd gone into this, or I really wish I'd gotten the chance to talk about something, but haven't had the chance to yet? Is there anything that you would like to, or even just something that you wish people would know?
I think it would just be I think trans inclusive spaces are quite, well, like definitely necessary right now, and I guess like that, who knows what the future's going to hold in terms of sport, because if we are to have a space where that trans people can just go into mainstream sport and not have those fears, a lot needs to change, and I don't think we're there yet. So yeah, I think that's it really. I don't know how much more I have to add.
That's all right. I mean, I think this is quite a new space. And I think also like a lot has changed very, very recently, like literally within the last like month and a half.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even with this project, when I was first doing it, I had very different questions. I mean, very different. A lot of it was more to do with like, what do we wish was being done? And now a lot of it is being like, oh, things are being done. What do we think about these things being done?
Yeah.
And like, where do we think that's going? And so I think like, feel like we're not just with this project, not like that, but like I think we're kind of building a new vocabulary right now around like, in this case, football's a microcosm on like what kind of spaces is it that we need as a society, and how is it that we build inclusive spaces, and who is it that's given access to space and things like that. And so yeah, I think a lot of us are having this like, like what do I say?
Yeah,
Coming?
yeah, and that's the thing. I think it is definitely a lot of things are changing right now, and it does seem to be that there are trans focused teams and trans inclusive spaces, and I think it is that thing of like, I've personally loved having like spaces that I know are specifically for trans people because of the safety that comes along with that a lot of the time, but in the future and as a whole, you would hope that also we can be able to integrate, and it's not like we just excluded ourselves from everyone else, because that's also not the solution that we want. Or me personally, I don't think that I'd want to completely remove myself, but I have enjoyed spaces where it is more trans focused or trans inclusive, and like I said, right now my team is predominantly women, and then there were a few trans people in my team as well, and no, I've loved that space. Like it's been so nice to be a part of, so hopefully more of that, I'd say. If we're gonna make decisions about trans inclusion in sport, then we need to let trans people be at the forefront of those discussions and decisions. But yeah, I think like hopefully slowly we are, well, I mean, in some ways moving in the right direction, and in some ways I guess not, with everything that you hear on the news. So I don't know.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on your experience. I think I've managed to find a space that has included me and I've felt safe in, but I'm sure there's a lot of trans people that haven't had quite an easy experience as that. So yeah.
I mean, the ideal is that we have these spaces available to us, right? So like it's only it's a positive, like, that you get to say, yeah, I've had that experience.
Yeah, and hopefully that is a sign that things are going in the right direction. I think it is always scary when you hear stuff in the news about them trying to segregate sport and stuff, because you think like, oh well, we're obviously taking a step backwards, but I don't know. I think at least there are spaces now that put trans people at the centre to make them feel included, despite what might be being said in the news and what's going on. So if we continue to build these spaces and be vocal and be active in the community, I think that can only grow, and hopefully we'll see more of those spaces for sure, I think.
Okay, as a closing.
Yes.
It's not that big of a question. Why do you think that other queer and trans people should get into football? Either playing it or coming to support your local queer and trans teams?
Yeah. First off, it's a great sport. I think that it's something that is, if you find the right team and the right space, especially if you're going to look for trans inclusive spaces, it is just a great sense of community. For me, I think that's been the driver of why I've gone and found these sports. I know there are a lot of teams now as well that are focused on beginners, because I know sometimes that's a barrier for people that feel like they aren't good enough to join. But like a lot of these teams don't require you to have any experience, and you can just go and train and not have to get involved in the games, or you can just go and watch, because trans people need to be seen playing sport more as well. So that's definitely another reason to just go down. And you might be surprised because I think football's quite interesting to watch. Even if you don't want to play it, you might enjoy watching it. So
It's cool.
yeah.
It's like watching improv theatre. You don't know what's gonna happen until it's done.
Yeah, that's it. You can get some really good games.